Okay, so the purpose of today's webinar is to explain enhancements to the CNAP platform. Most of the schools out there that are involved in this webinar have been using regularly. So there are 3 new features that we'd like to explain. So it's important for me to point out that, apologies for that email that just came through, point out that I'm assuming that most of you have had some exposure to CNAP. Okay, so from the very beginning, we've tried to bring schools along a journey in terms of educating them to use the program or the platform effectively. We feel as though that the majority of schools that have engaged with CNAP, the customised NAP plan analysis platform, that they are doing that, and we're getting some excellent feedback from school, which is great. But we can always be better. Okay, and today is about enhancing your knowledge and your capacity to use all educators, not just principals and deputy principals, but all educators to use it effectively so that it can be a permanent enhancement to the classroom, especially around planning. So a couple of rules and sort of formalities before we begin the webinar. At any one time, there is... I'm in my webinar. At any one time, there's going to be a large amount of people that are enrolled and are listening to what I'm saying and can view my screen, which is great. What I will say that is not everyone has the capacity to speak back to me. Only 5 at a time. So at the moment, we've got Alana, Andy, Ben, and Kelly, and also Jackie. Jackie Gannon have the capacity to ask questions. If you'd like to ask a question during the webinar, you can either type a question or use the little icon to raise your hand. If I see that someone's raised their hand, I'll glance down and I will throw to that person by unmuting them so that they can ask a particular question. So don't be backwards in coming forwards. I think the strength of any webinar is collaboration, especially considering the minds, the collective minds that we have available at our disposal today. There's certainly some heavy hitters in the attendee list, so that's great. The other thing is that I mentioned you can type questions, that's fine. What we'll be doing today is just going through a mock-up CNAP account. It doesn't relate to any specific school as such. It's just to give you an example of how the new enhancements will work in the new platform. So without any further ado, does anyone have any questions before we begin? Very good. Okay. So what I'm going to do is log into CNAP. And we'll begin at the home page. So this is something that will be familiar with everyone in terms of what you can see. What we've put in there just quickly is a way to personalise the home page. Now that is something that you can either take it or leave it. A lot of schools have been using it, others won't. But we did get a request to personalise the page and make it a little less generic, which is understood. It's quite plain at the moment. So as a school, I'll take you through your capabilities around putting your logo in and also a welcome message from the principal or whoever else that could be used as a motivational piece to get people wanting to engage with the data more consistently. So we'll look at that. We're also going to look at customised cohorts, creating customised cohorts and also conducting analysis through that lens. And then we'll go down to the executive summary capability of the system as well. So fundamentally, there's 3 drivers for today: personalisation, customised cohorts, and also the executive summaries that I want to take you through, and any questions at the end. Please bear in mind that my driver or my goal for today is all based around people that are current users of CNAP. So if there's anyone out there that has been invited that is not a current user, I do apologise, but today is just an assumption around making your user experience better. So let's start with the customised cohort, or as we could also call it, a saved cohort, whatever you'd like to call it. The customised cohort capability was brought in once we received feedback from schools. Some schools were saying, we'd like to plan our classes or put the students into classes for 2016. This was back in 2015. Can we do it before the start of the school year? Obviously, the classes haven't been input into CNAP yet. Also, we get from secondary school teachers, can I put my science class into a cohort? Can I put my art class into a cohort, etc., etc.? So what we're striving for is more flexibility around your analysis options. So if I begin the example, and we have a look at, we're going to begin where we always begin, and that's NAPLAN analysis and planning. Best performance school, 2015, year 3, numeracy, start analysis. So this is all very familiar to you, I'm sure. We can search by room or class. We can search by gender. We can compare to Australian mean or ICSIA like school, or even search by the bands. For the sake of today's exercise, let's look at the entire cohort, because we want all the students that sat that particular test. So there's 46 students, and some good news is you can now order via alphabetic order by surname rather than just first name, which is great. What I often like to do is click on NAPLAN score once, then twice, so I have the highest performing student at the top. Okay, this is where it gets interesting. So you may say, okay, I want to create a cohort based on specific element of these 46 students. I don't want them all. So there could be an element of the students that you want to take with you to next year. If it was a secondary school, they could be the students that are just in your science class. So for the sake of the exercise, I'm going to click on a number of students at random. Bearing in mind that you used to have to hold down the control key for this function, you no longer have to do that, I'm proud to say. It's a great relief for us. So all you're doing is clicking. If you don't want the student anymore, you just unclick, okay? So let's create a cohort within a cohort. We're customizing this group of students. So I've clicked on them. I go down to create cohort, which is the bottom button on the left. Create cohort. Okay. Automatically, what you need to do is label that. I do recommend that you're very specific in labeling the cohort you've created. Why? Because there are some schools that are working off one username and password. What does that mean? It means that every time someone at that particular school saves a cohort, it'll go into a generalized folder. If your school is using individual username and passwords, then that's okay. But I would recommend, for the time being really specific about how you're labeling it, as I'm doing now. So all I need to do there is click on save. Okay. Then from there, to go back and check on what I've just done, I go to Home, Save Cohorts, the bottom left tab on the left. And what you see is you've got Mr. Waters Science Group 2016. Very good. If I click on that, what I'm then given is the performance for all those children in the particular assessment area. So it's broken down. So if I go, okay, I'm interested in how this particular group are going in numeracy. I click on Analyze. Straight away what I'm given are those 13 students that I took from the original cohort, and they're all there ready for analysis. If I click on Analyze, what I'm given is a snapshot into how they're performing in numeracy. Remember, this is a year 3 cohort. If you're ever in doubt, please go to the top. The top where I'm hovering the mouse shows you exactly where you're at. They're year 3s, and this was numeracy for 2015. So please remember, this data was collated in May of 2015, so it's coming up to being 12 months old now. So what we see straight away is that our ICSIA would suggest that our performance expectation is around 1% below the national mean. This group of children sit at 2% or around 2% below the national mean. Sorry, 2% above, my mistake. However, statistics and probability sit at around 3% below. So that would entice me to want to understand what's happening there. And if I go down, what I'm seeing is First thing is the Year 1 concept question. I'm interested in that. View planning document. Students have got it incorrect. So only 7 out of the 13 got the question correct. Why is that? View, and I come up with a planning document. Now, the reason why I use this planning document a lot when I'm out at schools doing presentations is that it gives an interesting message. It portrays an interesting message. 4 children have some stickers on a chart. Ben has 2. Sue has 5. Harry, we're unsure of, and Jill has 4. Harry has more stickers than Ben, but fewer stickers than Jill. How many stickers does Harry have? So what we're seeing there, the students I selected were capable students for this customised cohort. What we're seeing there is a comprehension issue around the question, the concept fewer than. We're seeing capable students across the board in WA getting that particular question wrong in last year's numeracy test year 3. Why? Probably not because they didn't understand what was being asked of them, but they didn't understand the concept, but they weren't understanding what was being asked of them. They weren't comprehending the question correctly. So that's just an example of what we go through sometimes with schools. If I like that particular learning plan, I can label it again. If I click on print, then in real time I'm given the learning plan that sits there, that relates to those children. Okay. So I want to go back. If I click on Analyze Results, please remember that CNAP doesn't have a back function. So to click on the back function would cause inconvenience, and sometimes it causes the system to ask you to log in again, and we don't want that. We want a fluent process that enables you to create learning plans in the least amount of time possible. So if we click back to Analyze Results, we go back, refine search again, we go back again, and then if we go back to cohort, we go back to the original or the existing breakdown of the 5 assessment areas for your customised cohort. Are there any questions around the process that I just went through? Would anyone like to raise their hand or ask a question specific to that?
Can I just clarify? So if the school uses one password, you may have a whole group of unspecified cohorts if they're not labelled correctly, but you could also have an option of giving each staff member their own logon?
Yeah, that's a really good question. So fundamentally, the problem that occurs with the customised cohort feature, if every teacher is using the same generic username and password for a school, which happens a lot, then that area, and I'll take you to the area now, is going to get very crowded and very difficult. However, if you take the time, and I can send you the instructions for this, to set up individual username and passwords for each of the educators within your school environment, then they will have their own folder that looks like this, and they'll only have their own saved customised cohorts. There are certain secondary schools that we've worked with in the past, and there's up to 50 different customised cohorts, and it can get very easy for your work to get lost there. So my recommendation is, if you've got the time, to set people up individually so they can have an individualised folder. Any questions at this point?
Yeah, is there a way to get the head of learning area to be able to access their entire group of staff's cohorts?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's another good question. So when you set people up on the system, the principal is known as the system administrator, and they have full rights. They have all full rights and privileges. They can do whatever they like and see whatever they like on the system. So all you need to do when you set up a head of learning is tick a certain box, and that gives them permissions to view certain staff members and what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Thank you.
Pleasure. So that was the customised cohort function. That is something that we're quite proud of, and it's being used more and more in schools. There were certain schools that requested that function last year so they could put their students into 2016 classes before the year ended. We didn't quite get to that point, unfortunately, but it is there now and it's operating really well. The next element of CNAP that has been created is the executive summary. To access the executive summary function, you're required to go to the For Educator tab, which is the top right-hand corner. Scroll down to executive summary. What you're then given are some options to create your summaries. So if you have a look, always go to 2015 here, and I'm going to look at best performance school is actually a school that has 3, 5, 7 and 9. I want all classes and all genders. And if we have a look at our performance expectation at 1% below, I'm going to put our performance expectation at 2%. I'm going to be a little bit liberal and allow it to be go down to -2, so -2%. Also, what I'm going to do is have a margin of 5% either side. So what the margin means, if you ever get a little bit flustered and you forget, hover over the information tab. This figure represents the acceptable results above or below the percentage against Australian mean, shown as white. Results outside the margin area, which is 5% for this exercise, will be shown as either red, which is below, or green, above. Okay, so we're setting a 5% margin. The first element you can go to is report by assessed domain. So if you click on that, straight away what you're given is a summary of the performance for each year level, 3, 5, 7 and 9, based upon the metrics that you described or that I described in the previous. So remember I said that our performance expectation was -2%. So anything that sits in that range will be white, i.e. 5% either side of -2%. However, anything out of the range beneath will be red. Anything out of the range above will be green. Okay, so we can see here there's quite a lot of white. However, when we get to writing, there's quite a bit of work to do in years 5 and 9, and that stands out really quickly for the educator and also the school leaders to get that snapshot there. If you like what you see, you can then go to print, which is the top right-hand corner, and if you have a look at the executive summary, straight away you're given something that looks a little bit more pleasing on the eye, pleasing aesthetically, is the executive summary for the entire school, because that's what we've chosen. If I go back and I want to do a different search, again, please don't use the back button. What you can do is click on executive summary. You've got the links at the top. And again, I'm going to go for 2015. Let's use the same parameters, around 2% below the Australian mean, a 5% margin either way. Let's report by year instead of the assessed domain. So what we're going to see is a fantastic tool for planning. What I mean by that is it gives a breakdown of the bands, and it also highlights in red, for example, Year 3 numeracy, we've got the issues with statistics and probability. If you scroll further down, there's some green there in the writing for Year 5s. But again, as we know, lots of red in the writing for the Year 7s. Sorry, they're Year 5s. And there's, you've got Year 9 numeracy, which is a battle as well, okay? And you've got the writing as well, which was poor. So what we're seeing here is, for planning purposes, you have the capacity to break down what percentage of the students within the cohort sit at what band. Remember, everything we do in CNAP and around NAPLAN is about progression, not performance. How do we take children from where they are to progressing along that timeline or along that continuum? So as you can see, the goal there is to say, how do I progress the band 5s to 6 and the 7s to 8, etc., etc. And that gives you a really good breakdown. If you like what you see, again, what you can do is click on print. And in real time, what you're given is something that looks a little bit nicer, and that's a breakdown of the year levels 3, 5, 7 and 9 for that particular school there. So that's the executive summary function. Are there any particular questions around the function, Alana? Have you got one?
No, that's all good. Sorry.
That's okay. I just saw the little hand, but that must have been for your last.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, it was.
Not a problem. Good stuff. So that's very straightforward, and what it's designed to do is save time. So everything that we do with CNAP and Best Performance now is to serve schools by saving them time and adding value straight away in the classroom. So it's really important that when schools give us feedback, they do say to us, look, it's great, it saves us time, it allows us to get on with teaching and planning and do what we do best, not muddling around with data. Okay, so that was the executive summary function, which is listed there. Report by year, report by assessed domain, and you don't have to have all the year levels. You could just have 3 and 5, or you could just have 3, and you can change the margin. If you think the margin being at 5 is a little bit harsh, you can draw it out to 10. It all depends on what focus you're taking with that particular exercise. So again, we go back to home. Whenever you're in trouble, click on the home button. That always saves you. Please don't use the back button. The next element of CNAP, which I'd like to touch on, it's very quick, is customising your homepage. The feedback we had from a lot of schools was that the program was great, but it felt a little generic, a little vanilla, a little plain. So as time goes on, we'll give you the opportunity to enhance your homepage. But for the time being, if you're interested in that, if you click on admin and go to school, if you're the school administrator, you have access to the welcome message here, which you can see there. So what I'll do for the sake of the exercise, okay, so it says publish message, yes, publish, and if you go to save, what you see is it's a simple message that could be used for motivation or could be used for any type of message that you want the staff to see when they log in. It could be about a certain element of the site that you want them to use properly. And of course, you've got the school logo there. So again, if we go back to school, all you need to do is click on choose file and you're given the option to choose a certain logo. I'll just use a picture of Luke giving a presentation at the primary school last week. If I put that in, click on save, it's just taking a little while. Okay, it doesn't seem to be liking that image. Sorry guys, that's not a great look. We'll go back, we'll leave that alone, but please believe me that it does work when you put the school logo in. I think Luke's photo was a little bit too high in resolution, it was taking too long. So that in a nutshell describes the new features. What I also wanted to alert your attention to was the support documents have been enhanced. So also what we've got now is some written instructions around analysing and creating a planning document. So everything that I've gone through today in terms of creating the planning document is articulated in step-by-step instructions that are quite straightforward and easy to use. So if you ever have staff come to you and ask or mention that they're having trouble creating learning plans based on the data, then from my point of view, the easiest thing to do if you're unsure yourself is to direct them to support documents. And there are a number of different documents in there that are very straightforward and easy to use. So that's there for you as well. The other enhancement to CNAP is, which will be ready on Friday, is that we do what's called off-years testing, which is testing for 2s, 4s and 6s. Some of you would have used that product with us in the past. Others don't tend to go with that product. All of that information will be available on CNAP. So if you do use the 2s, 4s and 6s product, you're not waiting 4 or 6 weeks anymore for the off-years testing. It's available instantaneously on CNAP, and what it gives you is the capacity to do a longitudinal analysis across all year levels, not just 3 to 5, which can be a powerful analysis tool, particularly for a stable cohort. But that feature's not up there yet. I just thought I'd...
Jeremy?
Yes, yes. Hello?
Do you have the off years for year 8?
Do we do the off years for year 8?
Yes.
Yes, we do. Yep.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yep. So that's the enhancements that we brought into CNAP. Remember that the purpose of CNAP is to enable people to have better conversations between themselves, with parents, with peers within a school setting. So everything we do is through that lens. We want to strip away all the barriers to engaging with the data, and we want to make it a fluid process where you can get to a learning plan in under 5 minutes. So for secondary schools, the customised cohort is fantastic for science classes or next year's classes. And for primary schools, it's a very good way of breaking down and targeted teaching and also customising the curriculum if you're trying to progress a certain element of bands within the one curriculum and drilling down into those students. At this point, are there any further questions? Does anyone have a question or would like me to go through a feature again, or any misunderstandings? Nothing at this point?
No.
Nope. Nathan, is everything okay with you? Are you still there? Doesn't seem to be. Okay, well, thank you very much for attending the webinar. This was our 3rd webinar that we've had. They are getting more and more people responding, and if there's any feedback you'd like to offer me on email after the webinar, I'd be greatly appreciative of your thoughts. Thank you very much for your time.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Thank you. Have a good day.
You too. Thanks.
Bye.